Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Life's Essential Ingredients. Pasha, we back, baby. We back, and I say this on every episode, but I'm so fired up for this one because it's like personal for me. I haven't shared this on our podcast, but my beautiful wife and I are having a serious challenge that we signed up for, and it's called the Camino de Santiago. And it's about a little over 475 mile walk. And our guest today is an expert at navigating that, and an expert in just kind of challenging herself to say, you know what, I have some dreams. I'm going to go out there and just take action towards making them happen. So Pachito, we in Galicia, Spain, baby, right now. We've been all over the world. We got listeners in 33 countries, but right now we in Spain. That's what we're talking about. Pacho, good morning to everybody.
Good morning. And yeah, this is going to be very interesting for me too, to get down to the psyche of why someone wants to walk that far. I can't wait to figure it all out.
And good actually evening to Kelly, our guest. Again, she's in Spain there, 9 hours ahead. So I'll just say hello, and then I'm going to introduce you real quick, Kelly. And first of all, where you can find our guest, and this is, I know on this show sometimes I get on technology a little bit, but I think we need to use it in moderation. But man, what a great tool to have. I don't even know how I crossed paths, if it was on Facebook or something just last week. I said, I would love to share with the listeners about the Camino de Santiago, which is this spiritual journey. And let me find somebody who's doing it. And boom, here comes Kelly. So first of all, where you can find her, she has an incredible website. And it's Viva España movingtospain.com, all with no spaces. Again, Viva España movingtospain.com. Again, if you are thinking about moving anywhere to Europe, her blog is incredible, and so much useful information there. So a little bit about our guest, originally from Seattle, but in 2017, after leaving her job, Kelly walked the Camino de Santiago. And unfortunately, I do not speak another language, so I apologize right out of the gate. From Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, nestled in the French Pyrenees, 800 kilometers to Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, Spain. Whew, it's a mouthful for me. The adventure was transformational, and moving from the U.S. to Spain with her husband, Jeff, great name, was the logical next step. Except, well, stop right there, because it wasn't that simple, which in this episode, we're going to explore the highs and lows of figuring out life abroad. Today, Kelly lives on a farm on the Camino Frances between Palas de Rey and Melide in Galicia, Spain. In Kelly's words, it's magic. Kelly has big plans, including cultivating her farm, opening the Happiness Cafe food truck, sharing Camino and life inspirational tales on her Stories from the Happiness Cafe podcast. And like I mentioned, Kelly has a blog that is meant to entertain and be informative for those who are looking to dip their toe into living abroad. And over the course of her life, Kelly has always written stories, anywhere from on cocktail napkins, the backs of menus while traveling for work. And she finally decided to share her gift of being a storyteller into blogs, articles, and books. So check out The Red Rhino on Amazon. It's a funny collection of essays about living life, raising kids, and getting through it all. Kelly is published in the British literary magazine, The Cabinet of Heed, and her first novel, The Grief of Goodbye, set in beautiful northern Spain, was a finalist for several literary awards in 2021. Kelly, it sounds like you made the choice to live a life of adventure, and Life's Essential Ingredients congratulates you on having the courage to chase your dreams. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. What an introduction. That's true.
Hey,
You made me sound amazing.
you are, and that's and I love when the guests say that, because you're like, wait a second, this guy's talking about me. He's kind of butchering things a little bit, but he's talking about me, and I don't think we do that enough, to just sit back and reflect on life, and not to kind of gain arrogance or however that, but just to honor the actions that we have taken. And so that kind of is a great tie-in. We always start life's essential ingredients with a thought of the day. And it's a quote based upon the research that I did on our guest. So this is the one that I picked for you, and it's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Without ambition, one starts nothing. Without hard work, one finishes nothing. The prize will not be sent to you. You have to win it. Why would I pick that one for you?
I would say at this point on my Camino, that pretty much describes my whole Camino. The last, 30 plus days has been all about digging deep. And yeah, you got to go out and earn it. And that's when I walk into Santiago this time, I will have earned every single step of this one. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And just your life, it sounds like you just go out and get after it. So what, educate the listeners on just what is a Camino?
The Camino is really, it's a lot of things to a lot of people, I would say. But I've talked to recently, obviously I've walked the Camino with a lot of different folks. And it's really it's a journey, a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual journey to kind of get back into touch with yourself. And no two Caminos are the same. I would say amongst the folks that walk them, they're called pilgrims or peregrinos. Some people walk it for religious purposes, but a lot of people are in transition in their lives. And they're really kind of trying to figure it out. And that's, pilgrimage or a Camino can be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to necessarily mean that you're walking 500 miles across Spain. There's a lot of folks that take big adventures in their lives. They sail across an ocean. That's, to me, a Camino. It's just really that sort of stepping off into the unknown and embracing that. That to me is what the Camino is all about.
Oh man, I love it. And one thing that really jumped out at me that you just shared, which I think is a big part of the intent behind the show, is no two Caminos are the same. Mm-hmm. And I think, Mike and I are trying to figure out this one life that we have to live, and figuring out what are life's essential ingredients. And hopefully you have your values that are your foundation of how you live your life. But then since you kind of ingrain those and honor those in yourself and in others, that allows you to be open to be transformed by other people's life's essential ingredients, and to be seeking those. And I'm guessing, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I think, no two Caminos are the same for a lot of people when they can open themselves up to being, hey, how can I learn? How can I grow? And to not have a fixed mindset on, this is how life is going to be. And so what is it? I know you have 8 days left on this Camino, and not to get too personal, but what is it that you've taken away? What's your top one or two things that you've taken away from this Camino that you're like, man, I didn't know that about myself? Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I would say, as I said, no two Caminos are the same. A lot of times when you walk the Camino, you'll see pilgrims compete with each other. How quickly did you get to that next stage? How many kilometers are you walking every day? Where did you start? That's a big question people will ask. And there seems to be this sort of measurement against each other to, especially because the Camino brings out a tremendous number of insecurities. I walked alone, so it wasn't like I had a partner to walk with, and so you're meeting new people every day, and these are just repetitive conversations you have. Where did you start? Where are you from? Why are you walking? And I would say that for me, interestingly enough, this Camino wasn't about measuring myself against other people. It was about measuring myself against myself, because I've walked this before. And I walked it 5 years ago when I was, well, first of all, 5 years younger, but also healthier. And part of this Camino for me was to kind of get back into my body and regain the strength that I had lost. I'd gone through some significant illness over the last 2 years, and I really, really struggled with my own limitations, especially at the beginning. And I had to come to terms with the fact that I am where I am, and it's okay. And it's okay to be weak, so that I can get strong. And so I had to really kind of wrap my own brain around that. And it took, you'll know when on the Camino, it takes you a good 10 days to really get into it. And then the transformation begins. And that first 10 days I had to go through that.
Oh my goodness. I just got goosebumps about 10 times. And that happens to me all the time. Anytime I'm around people, I just, I don't know if other people feel that or not all the time, but yeah, holy smokes. So you said a whole bunch, and I love how you just said you're in this space of not measuring yourself against anybody. And I really appreciate that tip, especially Mike and I, being, we're both high school basketball coaches, played college basketball. And so competition has been a big part of our life. But my mindset in going into this is I'm not competing against anybody. And I'm going to just take my time and enjoy my time with my wife. And I love hearing that tip from you, because I'm going to just totally, if someone's asked me, I'm going to steer those questions such a different way, because I don't even want those thoughts to come into my mind. So I'm not even going to entertain that. And I got to figure out exactly what I'm going to say, but I love that. And I love you honoring in yourself what I would put into the consistency piece of C4 leaders. And there's two things that we mean by consistency. One, you want to do something, you want to be good at something, you got to BTA. And that just means bust that ass. You got to be willing to work hard, but that's kind of like a foregone conclusion. The more significant part of consistency that we help people figure out and develop and work on in ourselves is to consistently challenge our thoughts and ideas to the point of vulnerability, which is exactly what you're doing. And I think when you can get into that space again, that's when you truly realize, like you said, that you are strong. And that, you know what, I'm not perfect. Yes, my body is changing. I am getting older, but I'm going to work with these changes, and I'm going to empower myself to do and live my best life right now, with no comparison. And then that, just for you and for any other listeners, because we really don't bring this up that much on the show, but that leads to the 4C, which is creativity. And that's overcoming fear to be willing to share your gift. And that's the gift that I'm hoping I receive at the end of this journey for myself. And it sounds like you have already received that gift and will be when you march into Santiago with your chest out, your heart full, and that beautiful smile on your face. So let's go. Pasho, I'm starting to just get more and more fired up. So let's take a step back, though, and I do want to make this episode about your journey and your life abroad. But let's give the listeners just a quick little taste. How the heck did you get there? And so I'll say, we always put this out on the show. What was life like growing up? You can take that any which way you want and then get us to, hey, you know what? I'm packing my bags and we're going to live in another country.
Well, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and my parents owned a grocery store, and I worked in it, and we kind of had I would say, a pretty typical sort of middle class life, but I always wanted something more, and I don't mean materially. I wanted to go see the world. I felt like my future was over those Cascade Mountains, and so I traveled a lot. I made sure I had jobs where I traveled. I made sure that as much as I could, I was positioned in a way that exposed me to folks from other countries. I studied different languages, and finally, here I am, 50 years old, walked the Camino, went home, told my husband we should move to Spain. And I married the right guy because he is a big adventurer. He's done all kinds of stuff. And he immediately said, okay. He said, you got your smile back. And he wanted more of that. He loved that I was so happy and felt so strong and empowered, and he'd never been to Spain. And he said, okay. So 6 months later, we landed in Valencia with 4 suitcases. We'd sold everything in the US. He'd never been there. And we started building a life in Spain, So I think I am a relatively brave person. I have no problem taking risks, obviously. But my husband is braver than I am, and even a bigger risk taker. So, yeah, but it all worked out.
Wow, that's incredible. And yeah, I love you saying your husband again. He has a great name, Jeff. We got love for you, man, and for you. Going on this life adventure with your beautiful wife, and she's saying, braver than you, but that's the partnership of life. I think you gain strength from each other. And so, I'm not going to put words in his mouth. He's not here. But I'm sure he's like, hey, I have my best friend, the mother of my children, and we can conquer the world. And yeah, that means we're going to go, live somewhere else. Great. Let's go. And there's just the strength in numbers. And so I don't know. I know I've been reading about you, you have a daughter. I think she's college age now, but I don't know how many other children. How was that move for them? And how did you convince them? And how old was your daughter when you guys, I'm guessing she was a teenager when you guys came over?
Yeah, she was, when we actually moved, she was almost 17.
Oh boy.
So yeah. But also she was all in because she loves Spain. And she'd been here with me. We have an older son who's almost 30 now, actually lives in Washington, DC, and another son who lives in Seattle, who's 24. So, we've always, we always traveled with our kids. My big focus as a parent was to make sure my children were citizens of the world. I wanted to make sure that they, as even small children, were exposed to other cultures, other languages, other, just other ways of thinking that were not, just historically, how they were raised in the US, and that stood them in good stead. They're great people. So, yeah.
Well, Kelly, that's kind of amazing to just get up and move everything like that. I'm not that type of person by any means, but I have a question for you. Have you walked the Camino with your kids?
Uh-huh.
And if you have, how is that different than doing it by yourself?
Yes, I walked it with my daughter. How different is that than doing it by yourself? Very, very different. Um, doing it with a teenager, uh, obviously posed a lot of challenges. But I think, it's interesting. She walked ahead a lot. She walked with other people a lot. And at the time that was hard for me. But I look back and I think how much she gained from those experiences and those conversations. And I didn't know it at the time, but she wrote her college essay about walking the Camino, and got a big scholarship from a university that thought that was a pretty cool thing. But it was also the insights that she wrote about that I had no idea um, that she gained on that trip. She hadn't shared those with me. So as much as it was a big challenge to walk with a teenager, 500 miles across Spain in the searing heat in the summer, it was probably the best thing we've ever done together, I would say. We'll neither one of us, we're always tied together because of that experience.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm just so blessed to have a really good relationship with my wife, but so excited for this. And like you, I have a few health challenges that this is going to be a pretty big undertaking for me, but we're going to just take our time, but just really want to capture that. It's not even the story, but just that essence of taking these changes that we're going to go through and just have that be part of the lens of how we view each day that we have thereafter. And that's
Yes.
what I'm so excited about, because I try and run to those opportunities to just be really transformed emotionally, to try and be able to connect better with people. And so
Yeah. I think the Camino helps you when you walk it with someone else. It helps develop your compassion for other people, especially someone that your loved one. And you show up at the Camino with baggage with that person, no matter good, bad, or indifferent. You absolutely do. But then also it teaches you to have compassion for yourself, and and self-care on a level that you've never had to have before.
yeah, I love it.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And this is like so helpful for me because that's gonna be part of my challenges. Used to be, I'm 6'8", and again, we played college basketball, used to be able to do whatever the heck we wanted, physically, for sure. Mike and I are both pretty darn athletic, and yeah, not the case, and for me, just one of the challenges, is I have what's called CMT, Charcot-Marie tooth disease. So I have neuropathy from like my calves down, and
Ah,
almost like I'm a diabetic. But my feet, I have good circulation and everything, but it's just my nerves don't communicate the right way. And so that's
mhm.
going to be one of my big challenges of just taking care of myself and going slow, because going uphill is pretty easy for me, but going down where you really have to shift your weight and your weight goes through your ankles and your feet more so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a spot where I just got to take my time. And if that means I got to go down on my butt, if I'm going down something pretty darn steep and just go inch by inch, then that's what I got to do, and just
Yes.
be open to being, vulnerable that way, which I'm slowly getting into that space of being able to, hey, this is what my life looks like now.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
understand. You're
what?
6'8". You're going to be that tall American guy.
Yeah,
That's what I was going to say. You met that tall American guy? Yeah.
yeah. It's funny. My wife's 5'4", and I don't ever feel tall because I don't see myself with her, because I'm always with her. But then Mike's 6'7", and when he comes over, then I see, doggone, I look that kind of goofy standing next to my wife. So yeah, no, it's gonna be so fun. So what tips? I do want to make this episode a little bit about, people that perhaps are thinking about doing the Camino. That's the goal of this is, Man, I wasn't even aware that there's this spiritual pilgrimage that I can go on. What tips would you give somebody that's going to go? Maybe your top 3, top 5 tips of, all right, hey, this is what you need to do to get ready to go on this journey.
Yeah. I would say invest in really, really good footwear. If you're gonna, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, it's, it's so expensive, I have to buy all this stuff. It's like, put all your money in your footwear. Um, if you go to REI and get the list for packing, cut it in half, and then look at every single thing on that you have laid out, and really ask yourself, do you really need it? I think there's a lot of folks that are convinced. I've met people that said, wow, I came to Spain, I thought it was like Mexico, and I thought I wouldn't be able to find everything I need, and yada yada. It's like, whatever you've forgotten and you find out you need, you'll find it here, and you'll find it relatively quickly. So, or someone will loan it to you, or they'll give it to you, or so don't worry about trying to pack, everything in the kitchen sink. I have a friend, a Camino friend, actually, that I met this last year, and she handed me her sleeping bag when we met at a cafe near our house for dinner last fall. And I said, you don't want the sleeping bag? And she said, no. And then we got into this long conversation about the size of her pack, because they were in the middle of their Camino. And she said, we pack our fears. So when you look at that backpack, ask yourself all the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? If you're packing something for a what if, throw it out. Don't put it in that backpack. Yeah. So I would say that my biggest tip for starting the Camino, actually the whole way, and I didn't take my own advice this time, one time, and I paid for it, is make sure you tape your feet every single day. And I met people that said, well, I don't have a blister, so I'm not going to tape my feet. I'm like, you tape your feet before you get the blister, because the blisters will end your Camino. I've met so many people who got infected blisters and had problems, and tape your feet. So that's,
what do you mean?
That's my
What kind of tape?
Like, athletic tape, like,
Okay.
You can get it at a farmacia here. There's more farmacias in Spain than there are Starbucks in the US. And you can just literally go in, and it's like a flesh colored tape, big, thick flesh colored tape, and tape any toes. Anytime you get a hot spot, tape it, take your boot right off and tape it, tape your heels, and it'll save your Camino. Yeah.
Now, I want to make sure I'm really understanding you. So I'm going day 1. I'm going to put some of that tape on my heels, and where else?
And on the pad of your foot, all across the thick, where the ball of your foot is, just straight across there. And I usually tape, I don't know about you, but my second toe is longer than my first in my big toe. Okay. I always tape that toe all the way around, and it makes a huge difference. Huge difference from a blister perspective, and also losing toenails.
Yeah. Look at my Pacho starting to get all excited over there.
Wait. You lose toenails while you're walking?
So when you're walking down, there's some pretty big downhills, especially in the beginning. You don't really know how to walk, and you're figuring out your pack, and oftentimes you'll have toenails that'll turn black in that stretch, and as you're learning how to walk downhill. And after a while, like when you get to the last 2 mountains on the Camino, you know how to walk downhill, so you're not going to lose toenails on those, but oftentimes you'll lose them the very beginning of the walk, because you don't know how to do that.
Wow, there's obviously a lot more to this than I ever imagined. Did you say mountains also? Oh, wow. But I got another question, and hopefully this will help Jeff. You can give him some advice on those days when you just don't feel like walking, like when you've had enough, when your third toenail is gone and you're going up a steep hill. Kelly, what gets you to keep going? What motivates you on that day to keep moving?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'll give you an example this time. In the first, within the first 10 days of this trip, I went through a section that was up, and they call it the knee wrecker. It's from a town called Torres del Rio, Towers on the River, to a small hill town called Viana. And I walked that knee wrecker, and I had torn my meniscus before, and I had knee braces on, and it took everything out of me, absolutely everything out of me. And I got to Viana, and I was literally on the sidewalk in this hill town that it was, you got to climb up the hill. It's always the church at the top of the hill town. Got to climb up the hill over this hill town and then continue on. I had another 10 kilometers to walk that day before I could stop. And I was on my knees on this sidewalk, holding onto my poles with my head down, and my pack felt 1,000 pounds. And all of a sudden I heard this voice, this British voice above me saying, "Can I carry your pack to the top of the hill?" And I looked up, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, where did you come? Who are you? And where did you come from? Right. And I said, no, I'll carry my own pack to the top. I'm kind of crying thinking about it. I said, I'll carry my own pack. And I literally got up, like my legs were just absolutely wobbling. And I just had to take another step, just take another step. And I had my poles, and I just took another step. And the guy said, he was on a bike, and he said, I'll wait for you at the top to make sure that I got there. And people in that little small town, it's more like a village on a hill, were so encouraging as I walked up that hill. And I mean, it was a hill town. And it's just those serendipitous moments. I could have given him my pack. He would have happily taken it up on his bike. But it's just those moments that you have an opportunity to ask yourself, and find that energy within yourself. And that's it. I said, no, I'll carry my own pack. And I did. And I carried it to the top, and I carried it 10 kilometers more to Logroño. I checked into a hotel, and I laid on a bed. I in bigger cities, I always get a hotel, and you can do laundry and all kinds. It's like a gift to myself. And I laid on that bed, and I had no idea how I got there that day, but I did. Yeah.
Man, you
Yeah.
get me so excited again, just to get to experience the struggle that
It's
that
a
my wife
struggle.
and I are going to go through. And no, really excited. How do you capture? Are you a journaler? Are you taking pictures? Are you talking into a recorder? I'm struggling with because I like to write stuff down.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I'm going to do, as opposed to talking into something. But any tips for capturing what your heart is telling you on for people that are going to be doing the Camino?
I kind of write my blog in my head as I'm walking. I hadn't planned to blog every day, and I mostly have blogged every day on this Camino. I would say, yeah, I write it in my head, write it and rewrite it. And then when I get to wherever I'm going, oftentimes even before I'll take a shower, I'll sit down and I'll write it, because I feel like I have the most raw emotions about it. After you take a shower, you're like, oh, I feel so much better. It's like it sort of takes that edge of whatever you were feeling kind of off a little bit. And I feel like it's important to capture that. I try to be as truthful as I can be in my blog. Sometimes it's raw, sometimes it's ridiculous, but yeah, I write as soon as I get to wherever I'm staying.
Uh,
Yeah.
I love it. And listeners, again, where you find that blog, Viva España Moving to Spain.com. Just maybe one or two more things, and I want to let you recover from your Camino and things, but shake it up a little bit away from the Camino. What's some things that you've noticed maybe in the pace of life of living abroad versus the US? Yeah, and that's an open-ended question, but take it any which way you want.
Living here, it's like you in the US we drove a Ferrari, and here we ride a bicycle. It's that kind of the spectrum of how much our life has slowed down. Um, in and it's been great for us. We had no idea how hectic, and our expectations and our everything was just so, living in the US is very just right there. Everything's right there. And here it's not that way. So you have to learn a lot of patience, but you also have to learn to value the fact that everything isn't right here. My husband said, he's about ready to go back to the U.S. for a visit and see his mom. He hasn't seen her since before COVID, and he said, I'm going to go to the grocery store and there's going to be 27 different kinds of ketchup, and here there's two. So there's this sort of there's an appreciation we have now of of what we have, if that makes sense. We're happy that we have our two choices for ketchup. We don't need 37 choices of ketchup, you know. We have a community here that is, these people would bend over backwards for us. The moment we moved to the farm from Valencia, our next door neighbor came over in her apron. She doesn't speak a word of English. She mostly speaks Gallego, which is what they speak in Galicia, not Spanish. And she had a wheelbarrow filled with vegetables. She came over in her rubber boots and she gave us vegetables from her garden. That would never, ever happen at where we lived in the US. And there's this, I think we have an appreciation for small moments in life that we never would have appreciated before, because we were on a treadmill, that of our own creation. Certainly, it wasn't anybody else's. I commuted an hour and a half each way on a good day to the office. I didn't have time. Now we have time, and we use that time to build relationships and to do the things that really make our hearts sing. I paint, I write, I wander over to my neighbor's house. She'll sit down. She'll, of course, come in, have coffee, sit down. People are connected to each other in a way that I had never experienced in my life before.
I love
And
it.
we're part of that.
Yeah, so cool. And again, it just highlights to me life's essential ingredients. Can we simplify life to get to the core of what it means to be a human being? And you take away all these distractions, and they are just distractions, of using your simplest example of your husband's coming back to the US and he's got 27 different ketchups. Well, that takes energy to figure out what ketchup am I gonna pick, and doggone it, I can't stand it, because now that energy, and a lot of times we're not even aware that it's taking that much energy. And so we don't see our brothers and sisters, so to say, that are our neighbors, our brothers or sisters, so to say, in the grocery store just to say hello. We just don't have the energy anymore for all that stuff. And then that's why I start getting fired up, which I'm not going to do, but I'm going to make this just one statement about technology. Again, it's a great tool, but it's like, is it stealing our energy? And if it is, at what expense? At what expense? And so I'm going to move on because I want to let you recover. And we're going to end. This is how we end every episode. And we're so gracious for your time and just your honesty and vulnerability. And we wish you the best on finishing your Camino. Now, this can be my first time saying it, but buen Camino. I'm so excited to say that. But John Alston has an incredible quote. The only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. And Kelli, I want to fast forward, 45 years, 50 years from now. You're on your deathbed. You're surrounded by the people that love you and have been such a big part of your life. What is it you want them to take from you from the time you had together when you take your last breath?
Wow, that's a powerful question. I think what I want them to take away is love. I want them to know that no matter what, they were loved. And I would also say there's a saying, be bold and powerful forces will come to your aid. And I want them to understand that that's a real thing. Be bold.
And I love it. And you want to talk about bold, that is Kelli Field doing it. And I butchered it already. I have a daughter living in Spain, in Andalusia. She's teaching English in Chiclana de la Frontera. And I should have known it's not Galicia, it's Galicia. You got to change that C to a TH. When I heard you say, I was like, doggone it, Jeff. I knew I was going to butcher. But thank you so much for coming on and being our guest and taking the time. Thank you for challenging yourself to figure out who you are at this point in time, sharing that with your husband and your family and everybody else that you're going to cross paths with. I'm so excited for you and your husband to get the Happiness Cafe food truck rolling. Stories from the Happiness Cafe podcast. Again, you can read her blog, Viva España, movingtospain.com. And Pachito, you know how we do it, baby, when we get out. Boom, baby. That just happened. We out.